Yeah, so I wanted to, on the one hand, capture what it was that my mom was going through. And as an artist, I mean, it was incredibly painful for me and my family. And so I felt in many ways that by documenting it, it was giving meaning to the whole experience for me, which would otherwise just be purely traumatic. And so I wanted to document what my mom was going through and pay tribute to her and also to pay tribute to the science of dementia prevention, which again, 10 years ago, nobody was talking about. And so in the film, I wouldn't consider it a diet film. There's no magical diet that's proposed. It just kind of, the hope with the film was to unravel a lot of this sort of misinformation that I think we've been doled out over the past few decades with regard to what we should and shouldn't be eating. But it's not, there are other factors that are covered in the documentary, of course, but yeah, it does paint with broad strokes how one might live or eat to reduce risk for dementia. And as I mentioned, one of the interviewees that is in the film is Dr. Delamonte at Brown, who coined the term type 3 diabetes. And she talks a little bit about why we see rates increasing so starkly today. And she talks about how it's unlikely to be genetic due to genetics. It's likely to be due to exposure to whether the standard American food environment or something else. And we also have one of my mentors, Richard Isaacson, who's the Alzheimer's prevention specialist who, was at New York Presbyterian, Weill Cornell, whose work I stumbled upon really early. So it's really to kind of like drive home the notion that this condition doesn't begin overnight. You have decades to set yourself down a different path if you simply become aware of, the fact that your choices do impact your brain health. And so it's in part informational, but it's a tribute to my mom, and it's a tribute to anybody really who's ever experienced dementia, both as a patient or as a caregiver. It's a film that people will find solace in, and yeah, it's really cinematic. It's hard for me to watch, but it's a film that is I think really emotional. Really, it's a really intimate look into what dementia is like, and my mom is such a charismatic light, and she's so relatable, and she's young, she's like in her early 60s in the film. And so for anybody who thinks that this is something that, only affects old people, people, grandma, grandpa, I think it's going to shatter a lot of unhelpful misconceptions that people have about these conditions.